The Envelope Conspiracy. Chapter 1. The Anonymous Client. My name is Jack Walker, and I've been a private investigator for 15 years. I've tracked cheating spouses, located missing persons, and once spent 3 weeks proving that an injured insurance claimant was actually running marathons on the weekends. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for case number 247. It started with a letter. Not an email. Not a phone call. An actual letter, delivered to my office in a cream-colored envelope with no return address. Inside was a single typed page, $500 in cash, and instructions that would haunt me for the next 3 months. Dear Mr. Walker, I require your services for a surveillance assignment. The target's details are enclosed. I need comprehensive daily reports. Where they go, what they do, who they speak with, what they purchase. Every detail matters. Payment will be $2,000 per month for 3 months, delivered in cash to your office on the 1st of each month. You will send your reports via typewritten pages. No computers. They can be traced. Placed in manila envelopes and dropped into the mailbox at the corner of Riverside Park and 5th Street. Do this twice per week. We will never meet in person. We will never speak. You will not attempt to identify me. If you try to contact me or discover my identity, the contract ends immediately, and you forfeit all remaining payment. Do you accept these terms? If yes, place a classified ad in tomorrow's newspaper that reads, "Accountant available for special projects." If no, return the money to the same mailbox within 48 hours. Regards. A.C. Attached was a photograph of an elderly Asian woman with silver hair, and a detailed description approximately 78 years old, 5 feet 4 inches, lives at Sunshine Meadows Retirement Community, Room 247. Her name was Margaret Chen. I stared at the letter for a long time. Everything about this screamed sketchy. Anonymous client. Cash payment. No paper trail. Following an elderly woman in a retirement home. My gut said walk away. My bank account said take the money. The next morning, I placed the ad. Chapter 2. Subject Margaret Chen. Following Margaret Chen was possibly the easiest surveillance job I'd ever had. Which made it even more suspicious. Elderly people in retirement homes have predictable routines, limited mobility, and rarely do anything that requires a private investigator's attention. So why was I being paid $6,000 to document her breakfast choices? My first report, delivered to the Riverside Park mailbox on June 15, read like this. Subject. Margaret Chen, 78, resident of Sunshine Meadows Retirement Community. June 12, Monday, 8:47 a.m. Subject exits room 247, takes elevator to 1st floor. 8:52 a.m. Subject enters dining hall, orders scrambled eggs and toast. 9:23 a.m. Subject finishes breakfast, exchanges pleasantries with staff member. Female 40s, name tag. Beverly. 9:35 a.m. Subject returns to room. 10:15 a.m. Subject exits facility, boards public bus. Route 7. Heading downtown. 10:38 a.m. Subject arrives at Riverside Park, sits on bench near duck pond. 11:42 a.m. Subject feeds ducks, appears to be writing in a leather-bound journal. And so on. Hours of mind-numbing detail about a woman, whose most exciting activity was debating with another resident about whether it was Tuesday or Wednesday. But the client wanted details, so I gave them details. What she wore. Usually tailored slacks and silk blouses. This woman had style. What she ate. Scrambled eggs, always slightly overdone. Who she talked to. Various residents, the activities coordinator Beverly, occasionally a man named Gerald who seemed to annoy her. How long she stayed places. She was very punctual, often checking a gold watch. After 2 weeks, I was convinced this was either A family member checking up on her care at the facility. B. Someone planning to contest her will. C. The world's most boring reality TV show pilot. Then something strange happened. Chapter 3. The Lady with the Diary. It was week 3 when I noticed Margaret's behavior shift. She'd always carried that leather diary, but suddenly she was obsessed with it. She'd sit in the retirement home's common room, cross-referencing pages with a magnifying glass, making notes in the margins. She'd pull it out during conversations and jot things down immediately, like she was documenting evidence. One afternoon, I watched her have lunch with Gerald. The annoying one. At 12:30 p.m. Nothing remarkable, chicken salad sandwiches, discussion about his grandson's wedding. But the moment Gerald left, Margaret opened her diary and wrote something, checked her watch, wrote again, then frowned and crossed something out. It looked like she was fact-checking herself. That's when I started to wonder if maybe Margaret wasn't the target. Maybe she was the client's accomplice, and I was supposed to catch her doing something suspicious. Maybe the diary contained evidence of a crime, and someone wanted to know her daily routine to steal it. My imagination was working overtime, probably because following a 78-year-old woman to grocery stores and bingo nights was slowly driving me insane. My reports became more detailed. I documented every time she checked that diary, every notation she made, every moment she seemed uncertain or frustrated. The client had said every detail mattered, so I gave them everything. The cash kept arriving on schedule. $2,000 on July 1st, another $2,000 on August 1st. No messages, no additional instructions. Just money and silence. Chapter 4. The Watchers. By mid-August, I noticed something hilarious. I wasn't the only one watching Margaret. The other residents had apparently decided she was up to something. There was a rotating cast of geriatric spies, each more conspicuous than the last. There was Gerald, wearing sunglasses indoors and duck-walking past Margaret's mailbox while humming. I kid you not. The Mission Impossible theme. There was Doris with binoculars, watching Margaret from approximately 15 feet away like that was somehow covert. There was Frank, who maintained a surveillance log on a clipboard and kept muttering about Latvian spies. And coordinating this crack team was Beverly, the activities coordinator, who looked perpetually exhausted by her amateur detective squad. I started documenting them too, just for my own amusement. August 14th. 2:15 p.m. Subject observed at mailbox. Also observed. Gerald. Hiding behind plastic plant. Doris. Pretending to read bulletin board upside down. Frank. Taking notes with a pen that's out of ink. One day, I watched Margaret catch Gerald red-handed trying to spy on her mail. She confronted him calmly, somehow got him to confess to his entire operation, then called out Beverly and the others from their hiding spots. I couldn't hear the conversation from my position across the street, but I saw Margaret gather them all in Beverly's office. They emerged 20 minutes later looking sheepish. Gerald looked like he'd been crying. Whatever she'd told them, it had shut down their investigation. But it also made me more curious. What was Margaret Chen hiding that required both a professional investigator, me, and an amateur team of nosy retirees? Chapter 5. The Pattern. September arrived, and with it came my final payment and a last note from AC. This is the final month of our contract. Please provide your most comprehensive report by September 30th. Include a summary of the subject's patterns, routines, and any notable observations. Our business will conclude on that date. Thank you for your discretion. I'd been doing this job long enough to know when something didn't add up. So I spent my final month not just watching Margaret, but analyzing her. Margaret Chen was 78 years old, lived independently in a retirement community, and was sharper than most people half her age. She kept meticulous records in her diary. She was obsessive about verification. Checking times, confirming details, asking people to repeat information. She was also increasingly anxious about her memory. I'd seen her ask Beverly the same question twice in one day. I'd watched her pause mid-sentence, looking momentarily lost. I'd observed her frustration when checking her diary against reality. And then it hit me. What if Margaret Chen wasn't the target? What if she was the client? But that made no sense. Why would someone hire a private investigator to follow themselves? Unless they wanted to verify something. Unless they were testing something. Unless they needed an objective record of their own life, because they couldn't trust their own memory anymore. Holy shit. I'd been hired by Margaret Chen to follow Margaret Chen. She'd created an external verification system for her own memories. The diary entries, the obsessive note-taking, the constant checking. She was comparing her records against mine. Chapter 6. The Final Report. September 30th arrived, and I prepared my most detailed report yet. 3 months of surveillance, condensed into a comprehensive summary. Subject: Margaret Chen. Final report. Summary of observed patterns. Wakes daily at 8:30 a.m. Plus minus 10 minutes. Breakfast at 8:47 a.m. with remarkable consistency. Regular trips to Riverside Park. Tuesday and Friday afternoons. Weekly grocery shopping. Thursdays, 2 p.m. Active social life within facility. Regular conversations with residents Gerald, Doris, Frank, Ethel, and facility coordinator Beverly. Maintains leather-bound diary, consults frequently. Notable observations. Subject appears highly organized and detail-oriented. Subject occasionally asks for verification of information. Times, dates, details of conversations. Subject cross-references diary entries with apparent external sources. Subject exhibits minor memory inconsistencies typical of normal aging. Occasional repetition of questions, brief moments of uncertainty. Overall assessment. Subject demonstrates above average cognitive function for age group. Memory concerns appear minimal and within normal range. I typed it all up, sealed it in a manila envelope, and drove to Riverside Park to drop it in the designated mailbox. It was 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. Margaret's usual park time. I'd timed it deliberately. I wasn't supposed to make contact, but after 3 months, I needed to know if my theory was correct. I dropped the envelope in the mailbox and walked toward the duck pond. That's when I saw her. Chapter 7. The Revelation. Margaret Chen sat on her usual bench near the willow tree, surrounded by papers. My papers. 3 months' worth of surveillance reports spread across her lap and the bench beside her. Her leather diary lay open, and she was comparing the two line by line. My report. June 12, 12:30 p.m. Subject had lunch with male resident Gerald. Discussed grandson's wedding. Her diary, June 12, 12:30 p.m. Lunch with Gerald, discussed his grandson's wedding, mentioned they're serving chicken. She made a small check mark next to her entry and moved to the next line. My report. June 15, 10:03 a.m. Subject purchased stamps at post office. Her diary. June 15, 10 a.m. Bought stamps at post office. Another check mark, but she circled the time discrepancy and wrote, "Off by 3 minutes. Acceptable margin of error." I stood there, frozen, watching a woman verify her own life through the eyes of a stranger she'd paid to watch her. And then she looked up and saw me. For a moment, we just stared at each other. She didn't look surprised. More like she'd been expecting this moment eventually. She carefully set down her papers and gestured to the empty space on the bench. "You must be wondering why I'm sitting here with surveillance reports that describe my own life," she said calmly. I sat down, my mind racing. "You're AC. The client." "I am." She smiled slightly. "And you're Jack Walker. I'm sorry for all the secrecy, but I couldn't risk you knowing you were documenting my life for my own records. I needed you to observe objectively, without bias." "How did you even find me?" I asked, still processing. "I researched private investigators in the area. You had good reviews, reasonable rates, and most importantly, your ad in the phone directory said you specialized in discreet inquiries. That suggested you'd be willing to work with unusual requests." She gestured to the bench. "Please, sit. I think we've been working together for 3 months. We should probably have a proper conversation." I sat, still processing. "You hired me to follow you." "I did. To check your own memory." "Correct." She tapped the diary. "I'm 78 years old, Mr. Walker. My husband died young. My daughter and I barely speak. I've spent my entire life being sharp, being accurate, being reliable. And then one day I forgot whether I'd had lunch with Gerald on Monday or Tuesday. It was such a small thing, but it terrified me. So you hired a detective. I needed an objective record. Someone who had no reason to lie, no reason to coddle me, no emotional stake in whether my memory was failing. I needed empirical evidence." She held up my reports. "And here it is. 3 months of proof that my memory is 97% accurate. I get some times wrong. I misremember what people were wearing occasionally. But the substance, the conversations, the events, the important things, those I remember just fine." I looked at the careful notations she'd made, the check marks and annotations, the relief in her handwriting. "You know, most people would just ask their doctor. Most people don't require proof. I do." She straightened the papers. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth up front. I needed you to observe objectively, without bias. If you'd known you were documenting my life for my own records, you might have been less thorough. Or you might have judged my memory more harshly, knowing what I was looking for." "And the anonymous payment? The whole spy routine?" She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I may have overdone the cloak and dagger aspect. But I was terrified someone would find out. That people would start treating me differently. That I'd become. Poor Margaret, she's losing it." I thought about the amateur detective squad at Sunshine Meadows. "Your friends were pretty worried." "I know. I explained everything to them eventually. Not the specifics, but enough to stop their ridiculous stakeout operation." She paused. "Gerald actually cried. He'd lied to me about when we had lunch. Told me it was Monday when it was really Tuesday. Because he wanted to make me doubt myself. He was jealous that I always remembered everything." "That's terrible. That's human." He apologized. "We're friends again." She closed her diary. "Mr. Walker, I hired you to give me peace of mind. And you did. I can trust myself. My memory isn't perfect, but whose is? The important part is that I'm not losing myself. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time." Chapter 8. The Epilogue of Sorts. We sat there for a while, watching the ducks and talking about the absurdity of the situation. Margaret told me about her life. Her career as an accountant, her late husband, her complicated relationship with her daughter. I told her about some of my other cases, the ones that weren't classified or boring. "So what was your favorite part?" she finally asked. "Of following me?" I thought about it. "Honestly? Watching you feed the ducks. You always brought the exact same amount of bread. Counted out the pieces. Made sure each duck got an equal share." She laughed. "Of course you noticed that. I'm an accountant. Even my duck feeding has to balance." "And the most frustrating part," I continued, "was watching Gerald try to spy on you. That man has no concept of subtlety. Neither does Frank. Or Doris. Or any of them, really." She shook her head fondly. "But they care. That's what matters." I stood to leave, and she stood too, gathering her papers carefully. "Thank you, Mr. Walker. Truly. You've given me something invaluable. Confidence in myself." "You're welcome. Though I have to say, this is the weirdest case I've ever had." "I'll take that as a compliment." She paused. "One last question. The report you just dropped off. What was your final assessment?" I said your memory was above average for your age group, that your concerns appeared minimal and within normal range, and that the occasional inconsistencies you worried about were just part of being human. Her eyes got a little wet. "Thank you." As I walked away, I heard her call after me. "Mr. Walker, if you ever need an accountant for special projects, you know where to find me." I laughed and waved without turning around. Chapter 9. Sometime later. I got a Christmas card in December. Inside was a photo of Margaret surrounded by a group of elderly people, all grinning at the camera. On the back, she'd written, "Dear Mr. Walker, this is the Unreliable Narrators Club. Our new memory support group at Sunshine Meadows." Turns out I wasn't the only one worried about forgetting things. We meet every Thursday to share strategies, compare notes, and remind each other that it's okay to be imperfect. Gerald is our secretary. He takes terrible minutes. Doris is our treasurer. She forgets to collect dues. Frank is our security consultant. We have no idea what that means. Beverly keeps us all organized and sane. My daughter visited last month. We're talking more now. I told her about hiring you, and she laughed so hard she snorted wine out of her nose. She said it was the most me thing I'd ever done. Thank you again for your help. You gave me back something I thought I'd lost. Trust in myself. P.S. I still keep my diary. But now I rate my confidence level for each entry. 95% certain I had scrambled eggs, or 75% certain Gerald said his grandson, not nephew. The point isn't to be perfect. It's to know where I stand. P.P.S. I hope you found more exciting clients after. Though I doubt anyone's stranger. I pinned the card to my office bulletin board, right next to my PI license and a photo of my daughter. She was right. I'd had more exciting cases since then. But none more meaningful. Because here's what I learned from case number 247. Sometimes the person you're investigating is yourself. Sometimes the mystery you're solving is whether you can still trust your own mind. And sometimes, the best thing a detective can do is provide evidence that someone is exactly who they think they are. Flaws, doubts, and all. $6,000 to follow an elderly woman around for 3 months. Best money I ever earned. Epilogue. 1 year later. I was having coffee at my usual spot when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Walker. This is Beverly Humphreys from Sunshine Meadows. Margaret gave me your card. My heart sank. Is she okay? Oh. Yes, she's fine. Better than fine, actually. But we have a situation, and Margaret thought you might be able to help. What kind of situation? Well, Frank. You remember Frank? Our resident conspiracy theorist? He's convinced someone is following him. He's been documenting it obsessively, taking photos, keeping logs. The problem is, no one else can see this person. We think he might be imagining it, but we don't want to dismiss his concerns without evidence. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. Miss Humphreys, are you asking me to follow Frank to prove that no one is following Frank? When you put it that way, it does sound ridiculous. No, I said, still chuckling. It sounds perfect. Tell Frank I'm on the case. And tell Margaret she's a genius. Because sometimes, the best way to help someone isn't to tell them they're wrong. It's to prove they're right. Or prove they're wrong in a way that gives them peace. Case number 247 had taught me that. And apparently, it was just the beginning.